It doesn't matter whether one is 35 or 85. We should be enjoying life to the fullest.
People talk about things whether they have the facts or not. So get there first with the facts and get them on your side.
The way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Hello, and welcome to Elder Wisdom, Stories from the Green Bench. I'm Erin Davis, and it's my joy to be your host for these bi-weekly podcasts. Today, we're at number 7, a very special episode among all these memorable chats we've had already, because it's a look back, a look ahead, and a look inside. This podcast is a place where we sit on our virtual green bench, an idea that began at Schlegel Villages retirement and long-term care homes, to talk with and about seniors, to share wisdom. We know a lot of folks who listen and post their comments and write to us are family of residents who are interested in what's happening in their loved ones' lives. Well, today we get an extra intimate inside look as my co-host, Schlegel resident, retired leader and educator, dad, grandfather, widower, Lloyd Hetherington and I get to sit down with the man who started it all, Ron Schlegel. His accomplishments alone could fill a podcast, but you know what? We're going to let Ron tell his story. Ron, it is, well, I don't even know how to invite you and welcome you to the Green Bench. When you got this whole thing started, can you tell us where the idea of the Green Bench began?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember myself. We had this saying, the greatest untapped resource in Canada is the wisdom of the elder. And I just felt there was so much, wisdom that resided in our senior folks. But, I came to really appreciate their wisdom. And wisdom goes beyond knowledge, as you know. Information, and there's knowledge, then there's wisdom. That only comes with experience. And only the seniors have it. And so they have a lot to share and to give to society and younger folks. And so I'm trying to remember how that translated into the Green Bench. I think that Ted would know that better than what I do.
And of course, we're talking about Ted Hudson, who is the online engagement manager for Schlegel Villages.
That's right. I think Ted actually came up with the idea of the Green Bench, where we would take it public. I came up with the concept, I guess, of the seniors being the repository of wisdom, but Ted put it into action and translated into the Green Bench program, which is now global.
So tell us, how did it get global? Like, you have a Green Bench that actually goes around to different places, or explain that to us.
Well, the physical Green Bench is actually constructed by the community in which it is, although if it's within Canada and local, it would get shipped. But by and large, it would get built in the community, and they would have our specs as to how to build it, the size and the color and so on. Mm-hmm. But if it's in Manchester, England, for example, they would build their own. But if it's in Toronto, at Nathan Phillips Square, we would take an actual Green Bench there, or in our various villages, as Lloyd is sitting in one right now.
I just think it's such a marvelous concept. What I delighted in hearing you say was that there's such a difference between wisdom and education. I've met many a wise person who did not have a great deal of opportunity to book learning, but they were so wise. I've met many an educated person, as you have in your academic experience, who knows all the theories, all the facts, but they don't have a clue as to how to apply them or use them.
That's right, Lloyd. I must admit that I've gone through a lot of schooling myself, but I see a lot of people who have a lot of schooling, but they don't have really a lot of education.
Exactly.
Or wisdom. And I take my father as an example, who is the other side. He had grade 8 education, And he always lamented that he didn't have advanced degrees and that he wasn't educated. I said, "You're one of the most educated people I know because you've learned through your lifetime a lot. And you put us who've gone through a lot of schooling to shame." And so I have to remind people that there's a big difference between schooling and education.
Exactly.
And then there's a further difference with wisdom and education.
What a heritage you have. Your father was wise, so wise, and he passed it on to you and to his grandsons as well.
Well, I hope so. We do our best. But yeah, for sure, he had a lot of wisdom, and he was a role model for myself and for my sons, my three sons. And he was a wonderful role model in terms of how to apply knowledge.
Well, let's go back and talk about your dad. Your father, Wilfred, everything that kind of happened with his life really had an impact on you and your interest in seniors. Can we go back to that, Ron, please?
Sure. When I was 10 years old, and that was in 1953, and my dad bought what was called a private hospital in London, Ontario, Egerton Private Hospital. And what it really was a nursing home or long-term care home as we now know them. And he moved our family into an apartment that was attached. So we lived in this apartment. I carried trays. One of my responsibilities was to carry trays for breakfast before I went to school. I would run home at noontime to carry trays for lunch, and again at dinner time. So after supper, I often had time, and so I would go back and sit on the side of the bed of one of the seniors, and they would tell me stories. I often did my homework sitting on the side of their bed, and they would help me with my homework. And I just really became attached to the seniors, and they gave so much to me in terms of life and how to enjoy life to the fullest, no matter what one's age is. So we lived there for 3 years, and I did that every day of the week. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and seniors just became a part of my life. They were ingrained into my bloodstream. It's kind of like a boy who grows up on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
I also grew up on the farm, and farming gets into your bloodstream. And likewise, the seniors, my love for seniors just got into my bloodstream, and it stayed there ever since.
It's certainly part of your DNA, Ron. When I see all of the ways you've interacted with seniors and done research for seniors, it's very much part of your lifestyle. And I want to say a big thank you as a senior for what you have done and what you've encouraged your organization to do to look after us as seniors.
Well, Lloyd, a big thank you to the seniors because they have given me everything, my understandings that, have helped me to all the way from designing our villages as a village with a main street and a town square. That's come from the seniors. It's not just been fabricated out of my head. And so I thank the seniors for having allowed me to develop those appreciations.
That concept of the main street is fantastic. I walk down it every day to the dining hall and I see the place, the office and the library and the town hall, and it feels like I'm part of a village.
Exactly. And so what I've tried to do is to sort of recreate small town Ontario with the main street and the town square. And then this, like I say, came from the seniors and what they've appreciated, and it's allowed them to have a social experience. So, in a retirement home, it's care is basic and fundamental, but on top of that, it's a social lifestyle that's being created. and makes for life purpose and enjoyment. And, it doesn't matter whether one is 35 or 85 or 95. We should be enjoying life to the fullest.
That's right.
With life purpose.
That's right. And by building communities like that, you've enabled us to have that enjoyment. I know when I walk down the main street and see the activities and greet the people there and enter into it, I feel connected.
Yes, and that's exactly what we've tried to do. And, one of our best marketing approaches is not to take a person who's considering one of our villages for moving in, not to give them the big blurb, but instead just to walk down Main Street and let them experience it. And they feel it.
It sold me, Ron. It sold me on Riverside.
Well, that's really good.
Riverside, you mentioned, and the villages and stuff. I'm curious as to how, Ron, you go about naming these different villages.
Yeah, good question. In the case of Riverside, it's beside the Speed River, and it's part of a pastoral setting with the river. It's a glen, and so we called it Riverside Glen. And it's a result of us brainstorming a bit, but taking the attributes of the local community, rather than us be, the tagline underneath it is Schlegel Villages, but we're not first and foremost Schlegel Villages, we're Riverside Glen. Or in Etobicoke, we're Humber Heights, because it's right beside the Humber River, and it's the highest point along the river, where the hurricane caused all kinds of flooding.
Hazel, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that was celebrated at this school, which we took and kept the basic walls for the heritage, and kept the story alive of what happened back at Hurricane Hazel, and it's because the school was used as the refuge place, and people were dying in these floods along this Humber River, and they were taken up to this school at the high point to save their lives. Now it's a seniors' village, a place of refuge and life and strength.
The message that I get listening to you, Ron, and of course to Lloyd as a resident, is the feeling of connection. And really that thread of connection sort of weaves its way through your life to today, where you and Barbara, your wife, your three sons all hold leadership roles at Schlegel, Rob being CFO, Jamie, President and CEO, and Brad, VP of Design and Construction, while Ron, of course, you're chairman. Now, oftentimes the offspring of business people don't choose to follow in their father or mother's footsteps. How did that work for you? Was it kind of preordained, or was it a choice that your boys made themselves?
Yeah, it was the latter for sure. It was a choice that the boys made themselves. And now, mind you, there's no secret recipe to it, I don't think, but there are some underlying principles. And that is, one is to enable them, in fact, to make that choice. And there's too many fathers or parents who will push their children into the family business. And that's one thing I decided I will not do, but rather I'll keep doors open, but they have to walk through those doors. And they have to be willing to start at the bottom and work hard. I wasn't going to just hand them a big prize, at the top or something. They all started at the bottom. Jamie and Rob, both of them worked actual shifts on the floor. And now Brad didn't, because he was a professional hockey player, and so he wasn't around until he was 36 or 8, something like that. And he's worked on the floor since he's come back. But Jamie and Rob in particular, they worked on the floor as regular PSWs for a while, changing diapers or whatever. And so they started there, and to see, do they really appreciate and do they understand elder care and want to do it?
And Brad, by the way, if anybody wants to Google, look up Brad Schlegel. Let's see if I've got this right. Calgary Flames, Washington Capitals, 2 Olympic silver medals with Team Canada, and also captain of the team in Albertville. That's quite a story there. I mean, any parent would be proud as punch just to have a son who had accomplished that. And now you've got all 3 of your sons in the family business, Ron. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, no, it is. Brad has done very well. As you say, he was captain of the 92 Olympic team in Albertville, France.
Mm-hmm.
And Barb and I had the opportunity to be there those entire Olympics.
Ooh.
And we saw him play in a famous shootout against Germany. And then they played at that time, it was a Commonwealth team rather than the Soviet Union or Russia.
Right.
Because the Soviet Union had fallen apart. And so these players represented something. They weren't sure what they represented. So they called them the Commonwealth team and of Soviet republics. And I must tell you one little story.
Please.
There are actually several stories, but one little story is at the end, they won the gold medal. And Canada won the silver medal. And afterwards, after the game, most of the people in Maribel, that's where the games were being played, had migrated to Albertville, where the closing ceremonies were happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so the streets in Maribel were basically haunted. They were not haunted, but there was no one there other than the teams that were finishing off the hockey tournament.
Right.
And so Dave King, who was the coach, he had a restaurant booked so the Canadian players could go in and celebrate whatever they achieved, silver or gold. It turned out it was the silver. And so the parents were invited. Barb and I were invited as well. So while we were walking to the restaurant, I saw these players with raggedy tag clothes walking up and down the streets of Maribel with no place to go, carrying their hockey equipment. So I went to Dave King and I said, would it be okay if we invited the Commonwealth players to join the Canadians? And so Dave said, yes, it would be okay. So Barb and I went out and we invited them. And they joined in with the Canadians. They had won the gold. The Canadians had won the silver. And it was wonderful to see the 2 countries celebrating together.
Wow.
And the Soviets, they didn't have money to go to a restaurant. So the Canadians picked up the tab.
Wow.
Such a great experience.
Yeah, the true spirit of what the games are supposed to be all about, right?
That's right. That's for sure.
So you've got this family business now, and you can't help but look through the annals of business over the last, 100 years or so, and you see the names Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Cadbury, Bronfman. A lot of companies don't survive being passed on from generation to generation. What do you think is the key if you're going to give advice to business leaders who are working with and alongside family? What do you think is the key to success in a family business, Ron?
One thing that I did was I went to several family businesses that had succeeded. And I talked to the founders and asked, how did they handle succession, which is a really fundamental topic. So I learned a lot just by talking to people who have actually gone through it prior to myself. And there were the seminars as well, where the so-called experts, came in and gave their spiels. But, I learned the most from the people who really went through it. And one was, to give the choice to them, to let them walk through the door, don't push them. And also then to try to match their abilities with the company needs. And this is where I was maybe fortunate and maybe lucked out more than anything, is that Jamie, as you mentioned, he's the CEO, president of the companies, and Rob is the CFO, and they both fit those requirements so well, and they discussed it amongst themselves, and when Brad came back, they discussed it with him. In fact, they made Brad work for 2 years, where he had to work for them to see how he enjoyed it and whether they could get along as three brothers. And at the end of that, they sat down again, reconfirmed their roles, and Brad chose his role. He always wanted to be an architect, but he didn't really have the schooling for it because he was playing hockey.
Right.
And so he learned on the job how to essentially be a designer and supervise construction. And so now he's handling like jobs that are 50 million and 100 million that Brad is supervising and coordinating. So they decided amongst themselves what their abilities were and how they best fit in. And, I'll confide in something kind of personal to the company, that Jamie and Brad are twin brothers, identical twin brothers.
Oh.
And, Ron McLean, he got them mixed up. They are so like Jamie and Brad that I couldn't tell them apart till they were 16 years old. And then I could only tell them apart because Brad had a scar on his right cheek from playing hockey. Anyhow, Brad was playing in the finals of the Olympics, and Jamie, meanwhile, was finishing off his master's degree in accounting. And I said to Barb during the first period, "This is crazy that here's his twin brother playing in the Olympics and going into the final round, and Jamie's over in the library studying." And so I said, "I'm going to give him a call at the end of this period and tell him to come over."
Yeah.
So I said, "Tomorrow's the same a week to the day that we came over. Here's the flight we took, etc., etc. Try to get that flight and then get on a certain train at Paris, and so on." Like the chances were about 2% that everything would connect. Anyhow, it did. So the next day, and this was the game against Germany, and Jamie was sitting up about 8 rows in the stands with Barb and myself. Ron McLean goes walking around the bottom with all the TV cameras in tow, and he sees Jamie up in the stands. and he wonders, "What in the world, Brad, you're not playing in this important game? And are you injured? Or did you have a fall with Dave King, the coach?" So Ron McLean comes up and starts interviewing Brad, it being Jamie.
Right.
And,
Oh.
and it was so funny that he thought this was Brad he was talking to. And as he was talking to Jamie, Jamie said, "Look out there on the ice." And just then Brad came out from the dressing room onto the ice.
And here Ron thought he had the scoop of a lifetime. Oh, my gosh. That's wonderful.
He was going to get it for the story.
Yeah, right. Oops.
Oh.
So I know it was funny.
This story about your family just confirms that you have your priorities right. Family first and then business. And that's the way it should be. But by the same token, though you put family first, you had expectations that they would pull their weight, that they would succeed. And from what I have observed in my limited contact with you, is that you practice a servant leadership where, like you said your boys were hands-on, actually changing the diapers and doing the footwork. And that permeates the places that I'm aware of, where I see our general manager clearing the tables and pitching in and giving a hand. So I love that servant leadership where the management is by walking around and getting to know the people and getting to know the environment.
That's right. And servant leadership. And, my dad was a servant leader way back before people had developed that term. He was a social entrepreneur. He was a servant leader. He was out there in the community, working with people, working beside them. They started a new church just west of London, and my dad was the first pastor. But he was the leader. He was definitely the leader of the group. He assigned tasks to others, gave them the better tasks. He always took the dirty tasks. Mm-hmm. And I know that there were some people I was so young at that time, only 5 years old, but there were some people who told that story, how my dad always saved the dirty tasks for himself.
Wow.
And so it came in an honest way.
What an example of leadership, huh?
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there comes with it a certain amount of stress, too, I would imagine, as the sons of the man whose name is on the company, Schlegel, and of course, they have such high roles now. Did they feel a lot of pressure to overperform so that nobody thought that they just kind of inherited the jobs or that there was any of that going on? Ron, did you ever have that discussion with your sons?
No, we never really have. I just said, be yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the way they've been. Be yourself. Be true to yourself, and don't try to be something you're not. And I think they pretty much lived up to that, and very much lived up, all of them, to being servant leaders.
According to a piece in Forbes, a successful business is built on people and how they relate to others. Is that the servant leadership that you and Lloyd are referring to, that sort of an example that you're setting for everyone in Schlegel Villages and beyond?
I think so. Yeah, the people is what makes us. And it's servant leadership. It's not what we do so much as what we enable others to do. And we're all pulling together. It's hard to describe, but it's like my dad. You save the dirty stuff for yourself.
Right.
And you enable others to succeed and things like that. But yeah, it's very much people.
Yeah, it's the us and the we. We're a team together, and that's what I love about the employees. Well, they're not employees; they're team members, and they play I was going to say they play the game so well, but they really work together well as a team.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That they're team members, as you said, for a reason. They're not employees; they're team members. We're all working together, and they have huddles there on the floor, and some of the best ideas, come from the people, the team members who are working on the front lines.
That's right.
And giving their ideas. That's where the best ideas come from.
What is your wish for 2021, Ron? Everybody's kind of looking ahead, and of course we're all hoping for good health and to get through dark times. But what is your wish?
Well, it's to continue providing villages in more communities if we can, if we have the resources. Well, we'd like to provide more villages to some other communities. I know there's mayors of cities who are coming to us and saying, please come with this village concept. And boy, if I had stamina that would keep me going 24 hours a day, we'd be building many more villages. But we know that's not possible, but we'll do what we can. And we also want to maybe start, especially internationally. There's been a lot of groups from China, for example, who've come over to the RIA, the Schlegel UW Research Institute for Aging, and to look at what we're doing and the village idea. And they say, could you come over and build some villages in Shanghai? Well, building 19 villages in Shanghai would be a drop in the bucket. So what one of my wishes is that we bring over some of the folks from China and have them with us for, say, 6 months, where we work together and sort of jointly develop the village concept that's best for China and Shanghai, and then enable them to go back and to build those villages in Shanghai.
Wow.
So that's what I wish, an international program of some sort, exchange program.
Now, all of the education that you yourself have attained, University of Western Ontario, University of Illinois, Ohio State, and numerous awards and accolades, even though it's been since 1991 that you were a university professor, you're still passionate about research related to aging and seniors.
Research should drive innovation. And we follow a model of incubation, acceleration, and mobilization. We do this research within Schlegel Villages, not for the sake of, just holding up Schlegel Villages, but rather so we can apply it and that we can offer it to others to other long-term care and retirement homes in the province and in the country.
And far beyond that, can we talk about your studies of bone density and the space program, Ron?
Yes, yeah, that's exciting stuff. Rich Houston, he's a PhD in physiology and brain health. And Rich is doing probably the leading research for the health effects of astronauts being in zero gravity conditions for an extended period of time. And so what Rich has found is that when astronauts are up in the International Space Station for 6 months, they advance in their bone density by advancing by losing bone density by either 6 years or 10 years. It's a huge amount. So they're only up for 6 months, and they lose a lot of bone density, a lot of bone calcium. Now, he then has gone on to study it further and said, well, where does that bone density go? Well, he's done further studies and found out that it deposits on the inside of the arteries. So, in fact, astronauts are developing, quote, hardening of the arteries, literally.
Wow.
It's amazing work that he's doing. And almost everything he measures, whether it's insulin resistance or whatever, is advancing age-wise by 6 years. And the question now is, A, can we prevent it? And B, can we recover from it? And those are all lessons that apply directly to aging. Can we slow down or reduce the aging process? We can study astronauts to find the answers to those questions. And Rich Houston, in our labs, the Schlegel UW Research Institute for Aging, is the leading researcher in the world for looking at the health effects of space astronauts.
That is incredible.
Yeah, amazing.
Your reach has been so large that I don't think that most people who drive by the villages or who are listening to this podcast, which, by the way, is just another way that you have managed to reach out to people and spread the wisdom of the Green Bench. 19 homes, 5,000 beds across Ontario, Homewood, St. Jacob's Market, turkey farms. What gives you the most joy, Ron? What gives you joy in your life?
All of those areas give me a lot of joy. I wouldn't be in them if they didn't. I must say that working with seniors is perhaps the most rewarding. You know, with the 19 villages spanning from Windsor through the GTA to Whitby and to Barrie and so on, and now going to Ottawa, it takes a lot of capital. We're taking up a lot of our capital resources. You know, and I don't look strongly at what return are we getting on that capital. I mean, I look to make sure we're not going bankrupt. We're no good to anybody if we go bankrupt.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't look to see whether they're making 13% or 9%. What gives me my reward is to walk in any one of the villages and see the faces of the resident. And I see the joy they have in their face. That's my reward.
I just like to build on what Ron has said, that he enjoys what he's doing, and that is the secret. If you're not enjoying it, get out of it. Don't be involved.
That's right.
Because if you can enjoy it, you'll work hard, you'll accomplish a great deal, and everyone will benefit.
Exactly.
If you don't enjoy it, it's just a tedious task that nobody likes.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned this, Lloyd. You hit the nail right on the head. I've given several talks at convocations at universities, and I have the topic of every one of my talks is all callings are great if greatly pursued. All callings are great if greatly pursued. And that's exactly what you said, Lloyd. People ask me, when am I going to retire? I'm 77 years old. A couple of months I'll be 78. When am I going to retire? I said, it's technically impossible for me to retire because I've never worked a day in my life.
I like that.
And so I said, this is exactly the point you just made, that if you don't enjoy what you're doing, get out and do something different.
Mm-hmm.
It could be giving out hamburgers at McDonald's or whatever. If you enjoy doing it and interacting with your customer, good, that's great. But if you don't enjoy whatever it is you're doing, then get out. You said it better than what I could.
That was exactly my last question. What do you say to people who say, well, Ron, when are you going to, kick back and retire? But you've answered it perfectly. Retire from something that you love? Why would you?
That's right. Well, you can't. It's technically impossible
Right.
to retire because I enjoy everything, and it's never been work. Never been work.
And on a personal note, I hope that I can speak for Lloyd here and for the Memory Tree team and for all of us. Thank you for putting your faith into this podcast. The reception to it has just been unbelievable. And through you, through us, we're managing to share elder wisdom and stories from the Green Bench. So thank you. Thank you for having that vision too.
And thank you for this opportunity, Aaron, and Lloyd, to you.
Oh, Ron, it's been a delight to sit on the bench with you. I value so much of what you've said. I value your wisdom, your warmth, your caring, your compassion. Delight to be part of it.
And we'll make it a reality someday, Lloyd, when we get this vaccine out and about.
Oh, I hope so.
There's a seat waiting for you on the bench. That's what we always say.
That's right. Thank you to both of you.
What a delight. Lloyd and I return next time with a chat that is just, well, it's a real slice of life. Humor, heartbreak, and a woman you will not soon forget. Her name is Dee, but I promise you'll give her an A. Plus. I hope you'll join Lloyd and me for that, and please subscribe for additional episodes every 2 weeks. You'll be notified just as soon as they're up. And we invite you to share your thoughts and opinions on social media using #ElderWisdom to help everybody find us on this green bench. Please just take a moment to rate and review the Elder Wisdom podcast. And if it's easier, just go to www.elderwisdom.ca to find the link. While you're there, take the Elder Wisdom Pledge. I'm Erin Davis. From Lloyd and me, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon. Your seat on the green bench is ready and waiting.
Elder Wisdom, Stories from the Green Bench, is brought to you by Schlegel Villages, a complete continuum of care, offering independent living to long-term care, celebrating and honoring the wisdom of the elder. To learn more about us, please go to our website, schlegelvillages.com.